This week, we saw protesters across the region and the country calling for an end to the brutal force used by some police officers and for racial equality. In Boston, 10th Hampden District State Representative Carlos Gonzalez, who leads the Black and Latino Caucus, was among those who organized a march from the historic African-American Meeting House to the front steps of the State House. There, a group of federal, state, and local officials stood quietly to honor the life of George Floyd, who died on Memorial Day while in Minneapolis police custody. Then Gonzalez discussed a policy agenda to prevent police brutality. We spoke about that and more.
I think it was important to be in solidarity with all the community of color, as well as communities that are just standing up for and against for police brutality in honor of George Floyd, and all the incidents that have gone unattended and unresolved in America today.
During that event, you called for a need for new protocols and procedures and that lawmakers need to pass, such as what?
Well, we're asking for years of training for police officers. I think no different than some other states and no different than we've been asking for many. This is not new. We feel that police officer standard of training should be a priority. And that police officers not only receive the appropriate training, but also receive the appropriate mental health treatment, mental health support that they need as they address issues in society today.
When you say, go ahead.
Let me just add to that we also believe that police officers should be certified, no different than a doctor has a license, even a barber has a license. Officers have standards of training, receive certification, and if they violate those codes of conduct, they should be accountable and removed from their ability to work not only in the place that they lost their certification at, but throughout the state and the country.
When you talk about these standards, are you talking about standards for state police, for local police, both?
Every law enforcement officer takes an oath. Every law enforcement officer should be certified, and every law enforcement officer should lose their certificate to violate that oath.
You mentioned that this is something not necessarily new that you're asking for. When you say that, is it because it's not something that's been taken up as an agenda item by Speaker DeLeo, or what's going on?
No, I have full faith in the leadership and in trying to resolve the complex issues of community relations when it comes to the Black community, when it comes to the Latino community. And I think community policing has been effective in many areas, particularly in the city of Springfield. Was so back in the C3, which is a variety or similar to what community policing was then, also has played a major role in better relationships with the police community as well as the community that they serve. One of the things that I believe is important in those 10-point plans is to look at the civil service testing that is provided on a wide basis, and then determine who becomes a police officer or not by the testing scores, right? We in the city of Springfield court decree make sure that our police department becomes more reflective of the community they serve by making sure that when you hire that's white, you will hire somebody that's minority. So 1 and 1. So therefore, when you look at the police department in the city of Springfield, it is more reflective of the community that they serve. And we're looking forward to do that. And that's part of the 10-point plan, as well as the state. When you look at the state troopers in the state of Massachusetts, 90% are white males. That is not reflective of the community that we serve.
I want to bring you back to Springfield for a moment. You said that community policing has been effective, but a number of Springfield officers have faced charges for using excessive force. Now these are charges at this point, but there have been many issues with the Springfield police in recent years.
Yes, and I think that when we lost our ability to have a police commission, hiring, firing, and disciplining responsibilities, I think you have seen some issues that have not been resolved to the way possible. And I think that to get confidence from this community, we should definitely move forward. And I urge the administration in the city of Springfield to move forward and doing what's right, doing what the city council has already approved for, doing what has passed, and that is to appoint a police commission board with full ability to hire, fire, and discipline, which is key.
As you say, Springfield city councilors, a number of them have called for this. So do you intend to maybe meet with the mayor, ask the mayor to reconsider this, or what are your next steps here?
Well, I've stood with the city councilors 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and we'll continue now. And obviously, we will start that conversation with the mayor again to see how we can move the needle in the right. I know that there's been discussions about it and a different view as to what a police commission, whether it's a or a commission that has hiring and firing and discipline responsibilities. We look forward to ask the mayor to work with us to see how we can move the needle forward and making sure that there's not only transparency in the police department, but accountability.
When we look at the protests that have been in honor of George Floyd and condemning the brutality tactics used by some police officers, we've seen that across the country. Obviously, we've seen them here in Springfield recently too. We saw Humvees at some of those events. We saw police officers wearing riot gear. Do you think that these are the right types of infrastructure and uniforming at these events that we've seen locally?
In light of what's happening today, there's a different way of thinking from different communities. And I think law enforcement has a way of dealing with specific communities a little bit different than when you see some protesters come with MR16s and guns to a rally. So they protect themselves and address that type of protest. When you have the protests that are going on nationally today that have turned violent, those are not protesters, agitators. I'm not going to condemn the police department for doing that.
But the local gatherings that we've had, we thankfully haven't seen that type of violence. The protests have largely been nonviolent. So is it appropriate to have this type of equipment at those gatherings?
Right. Again, I'm not going to condemn the police department for having that type of mentality, but I'm going to applaud the protesters for teaching this community, this city of Springfield, this administration, and this police department that we can do peaceful protests. We raise our voices. We can take a knee or choose not to take a knee, but we stand together. And I applaud all the protesters that specifically I engaged in that yesterday from Central High. My son and daughter were there with me, and I applaud all the protesters, the young people, the older people, white people, Black people, Asian people, that all came out together. And I think it's a test of what this community is showing America. And I hope that message resonates to our police departments.
I heard a phrase this week. It was new to me. I want to bring it up to you here. It was used by activist Brittany Packnett Cunningham, and she referred to a budget document as a moral document. And that really stood out to me when I heard her say that. What do you think about that phrase, the budget document being a moral document?
I salute her for that, because I think this is about this is about God. And if you believe in God, this is about doing the right thing. This is something that's in the Bible, coming together and build a community that treats everybody equal.
Do you think that the current proposed state budget reflects those morals and the values that you just outlined?
Well, that's where we're addressing. I think it starts with economic. When you have a recidivism of poverty that impacts a specific community for a long period of time, when you have $8 of worth of for a black man in Boston, we know that there's inequities that have to be addressed, and we're up to that to do so. We have to make sure that people can afford to live. They can afford an affordable. They can be able to have one job and live comfortably. And we have to make sure that somebody that can go to work and work a 40-hour job can live and survive and be healthcare, be afforded affordable housing, be afforded a lifestyle of health and Medicare that can live a healthy life.